Yeah.
I switched the genre for you.
I appreciate that. You got to play Master of Puppets before the night.
All right, I got you.
All right, good, because that's my son's new favorite song. So I'm, like I said, excited to be here on what day is it? Monday? It feels like Friday already. Y'all, this past weekend on Thursday and I believe Friday night, they re-aired a show here in Baton Rouge or across the country on A&E. And it was really, one of those shows that you don't necessarily want to be known for, a city being known for, but a lot of cities all over the country that deal with this, not just Baton Rouge. But we were talking about the serial killer, and the show was called Butchers on the Bayou or Butchers of the Bayou. Butchers on the Bayou. Of the Bayou. There you go. And so I am working with a special a writer here in Baton Rouge on a project we'll talk about in the next segment. But Miss Susan Mustafa is in the studio with us, who was on the show and also wrote a book about one of our, the serial killer that everyone still, that was around in the 90s and early 2000s remembers, Derek Todd Lee. So welcome to the show, Susan, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
I appreciate it. So tell me about, let's talk about the show that came on and how it pertained to the book that you wrote.
Well, Derek Todd Lee, as you know, was a serial killer here in Baton Rouge. Everybody's real familiar with him. And in 2006, Tony Clayton, Sue Israel, and I published the book, I've Been Watching You, about Derek Todd Lee. Since that time, people are fascinated with this serial killer. He's gained a lot of notoriety around the country, and there are numerous programs out there about him. Well, I was contacted in 2021 by an Irish company out of Ireland, and they wanted to do a 4-part series on not only Derek Todd Lee, but also Sean Vincent Gillis,
Right.
who was killing at the same time, and really confused police because it's hard enough to to find one serial killer, much less two. And actually, at that time, Baton Rouge had 3 serial killers operating.
That's what I got off the show. I watched it last night.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I had to do a little research real quick, and we were, one of the things I wrote was, there were additional murders that they left on the show on the last season, on the last episode, and it really kind of spoke to the fact that there's still a lot of unsolved murders of women.
Absolutely. During that decade,
Yeah,
there were 60 missing women or unsolved murders of women in the Baton Rouge area.
wow.
Yeah.
And how many were accounted for with those two?
Derek Todd Lee was connected by DNA to 7.
Okay.
In the book, we have him at 17.
Wow.
Yeah. Based on a timeline of his life that was created by Danny Mixon, who was with the Attorney General's office, and based on where he was working, what was going on in his personal life, if he was in the vicinity, and how the women were killed.
Yeah.
And where their bodies were left, because he left bodies all over South Louisiana. And then Sean Gillis confessed to 8. Some people aren't sure if he really killed 8, but I think he did.
Yeah.
And he possibly could have killed more.
Yeah, it sounded a little bit like he was trying to sort of live off the credibility a little bit of Derek Todd Lee. Like he was trying to be what they call what do they call it when a replicate?
Oh, yeah, he wanted the notoriety. Yeah.
Oh, shoot, I can't think of the words. But he definitely wanted to see, the headlines. And he kind of sat there just very pathologically and told the story as if he didn't, as if you and I were sitting there talking about my life or your life. It was so strange.
40 hours of that confession that I have watched. And when I tell you, it's the most bone-chilling thing you'll ever see, because you're right. He talks to you just like he's talking about the weather.
Right.
But the things that he did to his victims were just unconscionable. It was Jeffrey Dahmer-like, and he was having his moment in the sun for 40 hours. He sat there and relived every minute of it as calmly and basically proud of himself. He talked about it was a chess game, and he beat the police in chess,
Wow.
For 10 years.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, so did you ever interview him, Sean Vincent Gillis?
No, I did not.
Did you interview Derek Todd Lee?
I did not, but Burl Kane at Angola allowed me to go onto death row and sit outside of Derek Todd Lee's cell and watch him in his cell.
Oh, wow.
And it was so creepy because he didn't want anything to do with me. He didn't want to talk to me. He never confessed. He never admitted to any of these murders. And so I was watching him, and first he got underneath his covers and pulled him over his head. And then he sat up, and the cells there are like 6x9.
Yeah.
And
Is it behind glass or is it bars?
no, it's bars.
Oh, so you can hear each other.
Oh yeah,
Oh, wow.
absolutely. And he sat on his bed, and his commode was right next to his bed, and he reached for his toilet paper, and he'd put it under his bed and then put it back on the commode and put it under his bed, and that's what he did the whole time I was there. It was so creepy. It was just like,
He was trying to tell you he had to use the bathroom.
I don't know what it was. I don't know what he was trying to tell me, but it was really
Have you ever spoken to any of his family?
Derek Todd Lee's family. Yes.
What was their reaction? Did that something that does the serial killer's brother sense that he might be doing that?
Well,
Or family member?
back then you have to understand that the technology of DNA was relatively new,
Right.
and people didn't understand it back then. So everybody I talked to in St. Francisville and the bars that he hung out at, everybody that knew him were like, well, maybe he might have done one, but he didn't do all of that. There's no
Right.
way. Nobody could believe that he calculated to kill these women. He stalked them.
Yeah.
And nobody could believe that the Derek Tudley they knew was capable of that.
Yeah. Well, and not just, what's scary about it is that he's living in the shadows all that time. And
Not really in the shadows, David. If you go to St. Francisville
Yeah.
and you're driving the main highway,
I know he's right there.
he's right
His
there at
house
the
is-
top of Star Hill. I mean, right
I don't want
there
to tell you where
from
my family
everybody.
members live, but they live close to that. And speaking of that, my wife tells me that she was literally 2 houses down from one of the murders,
Oh my gosh.
on a regular basis, babysitting. And so, you think about how much this affects each and every one of us in a real way, in a real traumatic way. Because these, it's one thing if you're packing or you feel confident about yourself, about being able to handle yourself in a situation. But these innocent bystanders, these innocent women who are weaker in physical form, can't necessarily overcome a grown man trying to, physically come down on them or beat them, take control of them, kidnap them. It's you wonder the fear and the trauma that was going through all of these women, these young college girls at the time, that he was inflicting onto our city. And so, it's just really, I want to speak to that a little bit. How did that, affect all of these women's family, all of these, the victims' families?
Oh, it was heartbreaking. You never get over something like this.
Well, Brian talked about it this morning with Allie Rice's dad. And,
Oh, really?
and just want to send our love and prayers out to that
Yes,
family. I mean, and all the victims that have been murdered in our city. And it's just, but specifically Allie, I was with her the week before. And I saw her, at the shed the week before. I performed, for a night there, and she was bartending. And I remember seeing her the night I left that night, and I remember thinking, it affected me emotionally. I have a 16-year-old.
Exactly.
So.
Yes. What Derek Todd Lee did to the city was he not only terrorized his victims, he terrorized every mother, every father, every person in the city who went to Walmart at night.
Yeah.
The whole culture of this area, he changed it because all of a sudden, we're South Louisiana, we're friendly. All of a sudden, everybody's locking their doors, locking their windows, not opening their doors. And it was an interesting dichotomy, but at the time when they were telling everybody it was a white man in a white pickup truck, women were opening their doors to black men because they were safe. They had been told the serial killer was white.
Yeah.
And so these women, when Derek Todd Lee knocked on their door and asked to use their telephone, they opened the door and gave it to him.
Yeah. Well, luckily we don't have many home phones anymore, so that's not going to be a good request to get into the door. But I do think that there is a sense now in 2023 that no one comes to the door. We all have Ring cameras or some form of, not we all, but we all typically look twice now before we just, or we try to teach our children, don't just open the door for any person who knocks.
60 missing and murdered women are what changed that
Yeah,
for this whole area,
yeah.
because suddenly Baton Rouge, which had always been so warm and friendly, you couldn't trust anybody anymore. You didn't know who was out there doing this.
It did. I wonder though if it also had a reverse effect. I wonder, how war sometimes brings unity in some cases, or a tragedy of some kind brings people together, like a hurricane.
Exactly.
Louisiana really comes
Yes.
together, and I do think that with the death of Allie Rice recently, and even this 11-year-old on Friday that was a victim of a shooting, random shooting by a 17-year-old. I mean, the lack of value in life of our lives is just really it's terrible. And what's happened, there, and we can dig in really further about how that's a nurture versus nature, and how it starts so much younger at their as a child, and how they're raised, and just the love that they either are shown or not shown. And so you kind of, I think what's happening now is, how do we? I'd love to know, maybe in the future how this becomes a way for us to study and understand how people like Derek Todd Lee or Sean Vincent Gillis get to that point. How do we help trauma, affect or in, inflict, whatever we got to do to disrupt that momentum that's happening for them when they start out from abused families or single mother families with just straight neglect, or whatever we want to call, or drug parents that are drug addicts, or whatever it is. This has to lend to some research.
Well, David,
No, go ahead.
you're really hitting on the crux of the matter here. The murders, which Baton Rouge has an astronomical murder rate,
Mm-hmm.
is not the problem. It's all of the underlying issues that aren't being addressed by society.
Wow, that's great. Y'all, if you're listening, we are listening to Susan Mustafa, a great friend of mine of many, many years, couple of decades and a half, and just having a really serious conversation about what was on. There was a show on Friday night. It's called Butchers of the Bayou, and it shed light on Sean Vincent Gillis and Derek Todd Lee and the two serial killers, which we believe they believe there was another maybe potential serial killer out there they didn't catch, but we pray not, but we know that there's 40 unsolved murders of women. Oh, they did catch him. Oh, you could say it out loud.
I wasn't going to argue.
They did.
Yes, his name was
We got
Rodney.
1 minute. All right, keep going.
His name was Rodney Lee Guillory, and they
Man,
did
these
catch
three
him.
names, people.
I know, huh?
That's
All
about
serial killers would have
Rodney
three
Lee
names.
Guillory, huh?
Yes.
All right. Well, glad to know they got him off the streets. And so, y'all, we are. Let me just say, I'm David Saint Romain, and I'm happy to be filling in right now for my man Brian Haldane on Haldane in the Mornings on Talk 107.3. We'll be right back. Oh, she said we still got 30 seconds, so I'm going to keep going. Boy, this is a rough morning for y'all. Sorry. Well, no, I have enjoyed our conversation. We're going to talk a little bit more about how we got back together and started working together
Right.
on this next segment. So I look forward to sharing with y'all. It's a little bit of what's going on in my life. So thank you so much. We'll be right back on Haldane in the Morning.
Dead air, David. Not a good thing.
Normally I do better than this. Normally I do better than this. Yeah, he did. I have to yell at my dude. Well, that was easy,
Oh,
like it always is. Yeah, tell this might put the linchpin in not getting any more opportunities.
no, David, you did great. No, that was really
I'm
good.
sure y'all have had rougher, but you hear me? I said I'm sure y'all have had rougher. I mean, it's pretty rough compared to normally. I feel like I normally do a lot better than this.
No, I think you did real well.
Yeah, so we will. So this is just 5 minutes, right? This break. Yeah, this break. Yeah, so we'll be.
So, what do we want to talk about with your book?
So we'll talk. I'll lead it open on kind of what we discussed about the mental health crisis, and where we'll go with it.
Okay.
That's the reason I started doing the work I'm doing, and with children's
That'll work.
advocacy, and then Songs of Survivors, and then let's talk a little bit about how we got back together. And
Okay.
we don't need to get details of the bar or where we met.
No.
We saw each other just because I don't want to promote the bar.
Gotcha.
He canceled on me last. Okay. Well,
You staying? Oh, okay. Geo, Bellagio area. Hmm. Yeah, that's a cool hotel. I know you expect Vegas to be hot.
mm.
Yeah, David, you're pretty good at this.
I mean,
I'd much rather do this than television, man. I
yeah,
hate.
because then you're basically having to. I mean, here's a commercial about recovery. It's like, yeah, good times. Scott.
Scott who?
I'm saying Scott. Just walked by. Yes, my favorite. All right. So I saw Metallica in 1992 with Guns N' Roses and Faith No More in Orlando, Florida. Most people around here
That
were
sounds
like,
like a crazy show.
that was awesome. I was 14 years old. Thanks, Mom and Dad. It was amazing.
I
And
wish I grew up in that
so
time.
my son walked up to me or got in the truck the other day from school and he's like, Dad, can we listen to Master of Puppets? And he's 7 at the time. And I was like, yes,
That's awesome.
what is going on? Like, how in the world did you hear this? And he said, well, I'm watching this show with my sisters called Stranger Things. And I'm like, and then I watched it. And I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't be watching this. But no. Anyways, we'll get to that in a minute. But y'all, glad to be here. David St. Romain with, filling in for my man Brian Haldane on Haldane in the Mornings. Thank you for y'all for listening in and all the folks out there that are sending messages. I appreciate you. Feel a little rougher this morning. I think the cold weather had something to do with it. My bones don't move as fast in the cold weather, but I do. And I did enjoy not sweating so bad this weekend while it was, normally already 100 degrees. So I wanted to. We're here with a great friend of mine and Baton Rouge native, New York Times best-selling author Susan Mustafa. Thanks, Susan, for being here once more.
Thank you, David.
And we just talked about how you were on Butchers of the Bayou on A&E on Friday and Thursday night. It aired 2 nights in a row across the nation, talking about shining a light on Baton Rouge's serial killers and even the unsolved murders of that they believe might potentially have been additional victims of those serial killers. But we're going to talk a little bit. I wanted to talk more about on this segment about how we got reconnected the last few years because we've known each other for almost 30 years.
It's been a long
It's
time.
been a long time. And last year I was in the middle of a gig and you came in to my gig and I realized that I just kind of got slapped in the head by God and said, she's here not just to see you play, but also to talk to you about potentially working on your own project, your own book. And so I decided that I would follow up with you, and we immediately began discussing the potential of working on a book together. And you were, one of the things you right off the bat, you asked me, what do you want to, what do you want to write your book? What's it about? So I personally, as we were talking in the last segment, a bit about the mental health crisis that I believe is going on, not just in our country but across the world, but specifically in our community, right here in our local community. We've seen how crime is affecting our community. We know the research around education and why we are 50th in the country in regards to education. And even deeper than that, in more of a localized, how this district is 51st in the state of Louisiana, in the 50th, play, like we're 50th in the country, but we're East Baton Rouge Parish is 51st in out of all districts in the state of Louisiana. So we know that there is a need. There's nothing but uphill to go. We can't go any further down at this point. At least we're not willing to do that. And so,
Well, David, don't say that.
no, I'm saying that because that's why I'm saying that because people like me, people like Brian, people like other advocates across the city are not going to stand for it. We're not going to let our children continue to, to not be given, to be neglected what they deserve, which is a solid education.
Well, David, we talk about the mental health crisis and the drug crisis. And,
Yeah.
Everybody knows that so many people, young people, are dying from drug overdoses now.
At an alarming rate.
It's unbelievable. When we had a pandemic and all these people were dying, they shut everything down. When drugs are killing people, basically, there's nothing to be done.
Yeah.
And what the spike in use of drugs is people are self-medicating.
Oh, yeah.
Because they have issues that they can't deal with, and so they medicate themselves through drugs.
Right.
It all boils down to mental health.
That's it. And you wonder why. We do have resources for, services if you are needing rehabilitation or recovery, or you need to, detox off of. Used to be a heroin crisis, now it's a fentanyl crisis, and it just continues to rotate to a different and cycle to a different drug. I grew up in the 90s, and you kind of watched that happen a
I
little
did
bit.
watch that happen.
And so, I watched a lot of my friends. I went to local school here. I don't want to call anybody out specifically, but we lost a lot of our friends to drug overdoses and self-inflicted death. And so it's just, I wonder. And those aren't kids that grew up in poverty. A lot of them grew up, with wealthy families. But
Hmm.
drugs and alcohol, or not just alcohol addiction, not just alcohol as a single thing, but alcohol addiction, and how overdoing anything, it becomes, it doesn't discriminate any age or any class. I always said that with abuse, with whether or not it's physical or sexual abuse, it doesn't discriminate. Yes, it's higher in certain populations or certain classes because of the access to children, or the access to not having oversight, or people who are keeping tabs on our kids. But going back to our mental health crisis specifically, how early does it start? It starts as early as infants. Whether or not you're taking care of your child correctly as a parent, as an infant, and then it goes into neglecting children's education and neglecting our children's basic needs, just from clothing or from food. And a lot of our we know as a lot of our teachers out there, and I know I'm yapping away, a lot of our teachers out there know that their kids that come to school, especially in our public school system, obviously don't eat a meal before they come to school. The
Exactly.
whole
Yeah.
the whole inception of free lunch, free breakfast for our children. And so, schools have become more of parenting replacements. And so it's how can we can't blame the teachers. They weren't hired to be parents. They were hired to be teachers.
Well,
But
David,
it's go ahead.
it's the family, the breaking apart of the
Right.
family, because now, most children statistically now experience divorce. They one or either or of their parents
Right.
leave the home and they're raised by the other one,
Right.
and that parent has to work sometimes two jobs to put food on the table. And so children are growing up without that basic
Hmm.
moral foundation, number one, and number two, with feelings of abandonment.
That's it. Well, so we got about 5 minutes, so I do want to be selfish and talk a little bit about what we're doing together. So we decided in January to start working on my own book, and that I would
Yes.
write a book, or really you're going to write it, and I'm just going to tell it to you. That's just the way it goes. Because admittedly, I'm not a writer like you are.
And it's been very interesting so far,
I'm
David.
sure it has. So every week we get together, and I just spill my guts to you, and I'm ADD as all hell.
Oh
So
yeah,
so
that's fun.
that's going to be a challenge for you when you go back after this research project that we're
I'm gonna
doing.
need you to write me a timeline
Yes.
because you're all over the place.
But personally, I have dealt with some mental health trauma also, and being able to recognize that through this book process is very cathartic for me, and it's been very healing for me. And so
I'm
I
so
think,
glad.
understanding that this process is changing my own outlook and my own ability to recognize and be aware of behaviors that have come from childhood trauma, or even from adulthood trauma. I think that lending that to other people, and how, I started a nonprofit to do songwriting with populations of trauma. If you don't know that, Songs of Survivors is my own nonprofit. I do songwriting with veterans specifically. And that is my way of helping people use writing and use their other abilities to change their experiences, to reframe them into a new outcome, into a new thought. And that's what we're doing with this book writing process. Is that
Absolutely. Yeah.
we're putting it down, and I'm able to purge it, and it's allowing me to feel and understand and revisit it and understand where this came from. So if anything I've learned in our process, and and you guys will hear more about the book in the next coming weeks, months, and how that's coming out. So we don't need to talk about that much more, but just the recognition of how to deal with this mental health crisis. For me, it was the ability to share it with someone and have them share it back to me through this process that we're doing. I would encourage you, journal. If you're out there and you're feeling like crap and you're using whatever it is, coffee, whatever it is to self medicate. I encourage you to journal, to find a way to write it down, and even if it's in a locked app, because you're scared to do it. I know what it feels like to be that guy, and I don't like writing stuff down because if I don't want it to ever come back on me. But I'm
Well,
going.
David, I write down people's lives. That's what I write.
Yeah.
And I have interviewed thousands of people in my life. And it's always like surprised me how writing, I mean, when people are telling you their stories,
Yeah.
it helps them. It really does, to get out their pain, to get
Right.
out the things that have happened to them in their lives. So I would encourage people to do that. Talk to a friend. If you have a problem, talk to a friend, talk to a counselor,
Yeah.
talk to your minister.
Right.
Anybody, people care. They
That's
really
true.
do.
Absolutely.
And they will help you. So
And that was my
anybody,
point
yeah,
in tragedies, bringing people back together.
exactly.
I think, we know that we have an issue systemically here in Baton Rouge and in the state and in the country. We got 2 minutes, so we're going to keep going, and I'm not going to end early, Alondra, and I'm not going to end late. But we know we have a mental health crisis. We know that we've done the research to understand, to track a child from early childhood all the way to our incredibly high dropout rates that have gone down. Thank you to our superintendent and the efforts of early childhood literacy education and mental health evaluations that are happening across the state. But how do we keep our kids from becoming, how do we encourage them to become productive citizens and not the opposite? Because I want to talk positively, not negatively. And I think it becomes, talk to our kids early. There is
Yes.
never an early enough age to talk to them. Tell them, give them the doorway that they know that they can come to a friend or come to a teacher or come to a guidance counselor or especially a parent
Yes.
or a grandparent. So I just I can't even express, and our listeners are not necessarily the population. We don't know who they are. The thing is, you might have the next person who's on the verge of doing something, either to themselves or to someone else who might be listening right now. And it may not be you out there that's going, why is he telling us to do this? But because someone probably is listening that may be in that position that might not feel like they have that support. So, Susan, thank you so much for joining me on the show today and really making it easy for me to fill in for Brian.
Thank you, David.
I'm excited about the work we're doing together.
Oh, I am too.
If you haven't heard of her, Susan Mustafa, right here from Baton Rouge. Y'all, David St. Romain filling in for Brian Haldane on Haldane in the Mornings on Talk 1073. You can listen and watch it at talk1073.com.
Yeah, that was good. Oh, do you?
You want to hang out? And we'll I'm gonna do I don't know what I'm gonna do because I was gonna do all that in the 5 minutes that I had. But let me read this real quick.
Well, what are you doing when you leave here?
Um, breakfast.
You want to go have breakfast? All right, I'll wait for you downstairs. It was nice meeting you.
earn my way back into the fold. Covered a lot of stuff. Get some calls. Get this guy off the air.
My last song of the day.
Jet Airliner by Steve Miller Band. Big old jet airliner. Don't carry me too far away. Whoa, big old jet airliner. Yes, I'm here and I'm about to stay. We're flying into the segment. I don't know, being stupid.
Jet up to a meeting after this.
Roll. Yeah, I'll grab my stuff and head out. Yeah. As long as I don't have to push any buttons yet. I can learn this board pretty quick if you guys ever just got to teach me. You just have to teach me because I've never used a radio board before. I mean, I use consoles all the time, digital consoles. What does this do? I know what mute does. What does saying like where do you move from this? What's live? What's not? They used to not have an operator. It would be the DJ and the operator at the same time. At least in country, on the country station, that's how it was. Yeah. All right. Welcome back to Haldane in the Mornings on Talk 107.3 FM. Landra, it's been a good show. Last hour of the show.
I like it. I think we should do this permanently. Kick Brian out. I'm just kidding.
I'm glad
just
Brian's
kidding.
in his meeting right now and can't hear
Not
us.
listening.
Yeah.
I'll tell him I said it.
No, but we've really, I mean, it's awesome to be able to get the opportunity to just talk. Because if you know me, you know that I like to talk. I definitely do enough of that.
Yeah.
And I picked that last song for a reason because I got asked to sing in a hangar on April 25th. So I'm going to be at the Baton Rouge airport for some private event. I don't know what it is, but
it's fun.
But it was like,
can I go?
Jet Airliner.
Play that song?
We've got like 6 or 8
like airplane
related songs just because of it. And jet, we're doing some jet. We're doing, I mean, it was awesome. It was like, yeah, I told the band, and I started getting text messages from the band of all these airplane songs, and jet songs. I'm just sitting out here watching airplanes.
Yeah.
So do a little Gary Allen. Dude, we're gonna mix it up. It's gonna be a good time. But and if you do want to see me play, my next live show publicly will be April 28th at the St. John Fair. I think that's my next St. John down in Prairieville, St. John the Evangelist Church Fair. But you know, it was we covered a lot of topics in this hour. We covered you know, some economic stuff. We covered a lot of education conversation. We covered crime and serial killers with Susan Mustafa. I just want you to be encouraged as we move into the summer of 2023. In a few ways, not just we have a lot to look forward to. We have a lot of uphill to go, but there's a lot of access and a lot of support, and frankly, a lot of resources that are out there that if you don't know are out there, you should check out. How do I get, what are free summer camps if you need to send your kids to summer camp? Don't leave your kids home by themselves all summer. There are a lot of opportunities out there that you can find through the Advocate or through websites out there that have, like I said, free summer camps in Baton Rouge, the vacation Bible schools that all the churches serve. There's a lot of access and resources out there. And if you need, reach out to the radio station and they might be able to help you find them. But I want to encourage you, to spend this summer doing something special with your family, whether or not it's, hey, I've got a Saturday and Sunday off, or I'm off on an evening because I work 7 days a week. Take one evening a week and spend it with your family. Have dinner at the table. One of my favorite things to do is Sunday nights. Unlike this Sunday is a challenge, but most Sunday nights I try to, have dinner with my kids and my wife and try to spend that one night a week with my family. So, doing that can really change, I believe, change the outcome of our mental health in general, is just helping support each other and our families that way. So it's been an awesome day, and it's a beautiful Monday. We're going to go up in temperature, y'all. We're not going to stay cold. We will creep back down a little bit, but I know we're going back to our normal March, looking like about 81 for our high on Wednesday, and then we'll be back down into the 70s right after that. But it's a beautiful Monday. There's nothing but awesome things to happen this week. Even if you're challenged and you're alone, you're not alone. We think about you. We're out there here. There's a lot of hotlines to call, but you can always reach out to me. You can text me at 225-396-4166. Do it right now. Text me, David. What's up? 225-396-4166. Y'all, David St. Romain, honored to be here for my man Brian Haldane on Haldane in the Mornings. You can watch it live on talk1073.com, or you can go back and see it in the archives. Love you so much out there. See you soon.
All right, peace out, Facebook. I got to go to a meeting. Thank you. See y'all tomorrow.